Ave Maris Stella.
Hello and welcome back to Vatican II in a Year. This is your host, Father Matthew Schneider. I am a priest of the Legions of Christ and a theology professor. This is a podcast on the StarCrest Production Network at sqpn.com. Today, we're on day 178 and we're covering Gravissima Educationes 8 on Catholic schools. And if you want to follow along, we have a reading plan and more details at sqpn.com/Vatican or frmatthewlc.com/Vatican. Yesterday, we spoke about how parents are the primary educators of their children, and the state must ensure that education choice. And we spoke about how the church needs to be involved in education to ensure morals. Today, we are talking about the Catholic school, right? That's the title of our section 8 here. And the summary is the church has the right to build schools, and it is an important apostolate of the church and of teachers. Apostolate here is used as opposed to ministry. They mean very similar things. Apostolate comes from the idea of apostle, that they are being apostles, that they are doing the work of an apostle, that kind of aspect. So let's get straight into paragraph 8. There's 3 subparagraphs. A is about Catholic schools should build community. B is the church must be free to establish all kinds of schools. And C is about teachers. The Catholic schools depend on them and should have special care for them. Yes, we need to have special care for them so that they can form students well, teach students well. So let's begin. A, the influence of the church in the field of education is shown in a special manner by the Catholic school. No less than other schools does the Catholic school pursue cultural goals and the human formation of youth. But its proper function is to create for the school community a special atmosphere animated by the gospel spirit of freedom and charity, to help youth grow according to the new circumstances they were made through baptism as they develop their own personality, and finally to order the whole human culture to the news of salvation, so that the knowledge of students gradually acquire of the world, life, and man is illuminated by faith. So indeed, the Catholic school, while it is open, as it must be, to the situation of the contemporary world, leads its students to promote efficaciously the good of the earthly city and also prepares them for service and the spread of the kingdom of God, so that by leading by an exemplary apostolic life, they may become, as it were, a saving leaven to the human community. So this begins by just noting that, yes, if it's a Catholic school as opposed to a non-Catholic school or a public school, the church has more of a role. I think that's pretty straightforward. And the church is not just there for, hey, we want to make sure that they learn the Our Father and learn the spiritual things. No, the church is concerned with the good and non-spiritual areas. A number of different organizations of the church use different terms like integral formation, which talks about intellectual, human, spiritual, and apostolic formation. So you're forming the students in all those areas. And it's important to form them in a Christian way in all those areas. Now, obviously, in the intellectual and the human, it's going to be closer between non-Christian and Christian sources than it might be in the spiritual apostolic, but that idea that students are formed in all those different areas. So the communities also build community. That community together forms. As we noted before, that young people, children, are formed by all their experiences. My sister forms her kids by how she treats them, by how she accepts their siblings treating them, things like that, forms them. And so that whole community of the school forms students. And ultimately, it's ordered towards salvation. It's for this city and the city to come. Remember, St. Augustine talks about the city of man and the city of God. And that's important in how we do this. Now, the city of man is not evil in itself. Now, obviously, there's evil things in the city of man. But the idea that people need to make money and pay the bills and things like that are not evil in themselves. And it's good that we as Catholic schools form people so they are ready to do that. Because just simple things like, I have a sister who stays at home because her husband makes a good deal of money so she can stay in with the kids. If her husband didn't have his education, he probably couldn't make as much money, and there's a good chance she would have to work. And that's just the reality. So moving on to paragraph B is more about the relationship between church and state, and it's basically saying, hey, the church needs to be free to establish all kinds of schools. And all kinds here means different types, different levels. So not just elementary, not just college, all those, but also college versus trade school versus theology versus more secular subjects like engineering or education or English or chemistry or anything. So let's read it. B. Since, therefore, the Catholic school can be such an aid to the fulfillment of the mission of the people of God and to the fostering of dialogue between the church and mankind, to the benefit of both, it retains, even in our present circumstance, the utmost importance. Consequently, this sacred center proclaims anew what has already been taught in several documents of the magisterium, namely, the right of the church freely to establish and conduct schools of every type and level. And the Council calls to mind that the exercise of a right of this kind contributes in the highest degree to the protection of freedom of conscience, the rights of parents, as well as the betterment of culture itself. And so, schools are important to the church for fulfilling their mission. It's important those schools actually have a strong Catholic mission. We've all but most of us have probably run into Catholic schools where the Catholicity of it is not the strongest. But this is important that both we have the good Catholicity because it helps all the areas, and that this is a mission of the church is important, and it benefits all of society to have these good Catholic schools. Because even if the state gives you some money for the school, it maybe not give you as much as they would pay for the public schools. So that's more money for the state to use for roads or other things. And also the benefit of that kind of deeper human spiritual formation that hopefully will make you a better person in society, less likely to commit crimes, more likely to be productive, things like that, right? And this is the every level of school: grad school, elementary school, pre-K school, everything in between. And exercising this right protects conscience. It helps parents, it protects their conscience, what they want to do for their kids, and it betters culture. So we have this whole aspect of helping consciences be free, helping that religious liberty, which we'll talk about in Dignitatis Humanae. I've actually already recorded those episodes, so I was trying to remember if it was past or future. As you will hear it, it's future for you, but it's past for me. And things like that talks about that freedom of conscience, freedom of religion, and that's an important aspect there. Now, moving on to paragraph C, it's the longest of the three, and it talks about Catholic schools and Catholic teachers. And the Catholic teachers are the key to the Catholic school, and we need to have special care for them as a church. So let's read it. C, but let teachers recognize that the Catholic school depends upon them almost entirely for the accomplishment of its goals and programs. They should therefore be very carefully prepared so that both in secular and religious knowledge they are equipped with suitable qualifications and also with a pedagogical skill that is keep with the findings of the contemporary world. Intimately linked in charity to one another and to their students, and endowed with an apostolic spirit, may teachers by their life, as much as by their instruction, bear witness to Christ, the unique teacher. Let them work as partners with parents, and together with them in every phase of education give due consideration to the difference of sex and the proper and divine providence assigned to each sex in the family and in society. Let them do all they can to stimulate their students to act for themselves, and even after graduation continue to assist them with advice, friendship, and by establishing special association imbued with the true spirit of the Church. The work of these teachers, the Sacred Synod declares, is, in a real sense of the word, an apostolate most suited and necessary for our times, and at once a true service offered to society. The Council also reminds Catholic parents of the duty of entrusting their children to Catholic schools wherever and whenever it is possible, and supporting these schools to the best of their ability, and cooperate with them for the education of their children. I think it's pretty obvious that schools depend significantly on teachers. Those are the ones who form them. And obviously also depend on things like principals who form the teachers, who organize the teachers, even simple things like how much the principal supports teachers doing different things. Now, we need good preparation of these teachers. We need them to understand whatever they're teaching and good pedagogy. Now, as grades go up and down, the younger levels, pedagogy is more of the challenge, whereas the older levels, the actual content's more of the challenge. We need some pedagogy for teaching university, but I've taken 2 courses each, like under a week on pedagogy, and that's probably above average for college professors. And so that is because at that level, the degree of pedagogy is not needed, whereas 3rd grade, we can all do the things of 3rd grade. Well, almost everybody. I assume everybody's listening to this podcast can. But I'm not an expert in pedagogy, how to teach 3rd graders to do multi-digit multiplication, division, or something like that, or long division. I could probably do long division. I don't even remember exactly how to do it, but those type of things is important. And then we don't discount modern pedagogy, because a lot of this stuff we've understood psychology and understood how people learn with all these studies, and that's good. And it's also important to think of this as an apostolate for teachers. An apostolate, being an apostle, going out to share the gospel. It's not just a job. What do teachers do? They witness to Jesus. They serve all their students. They bring their students to know, love, and serve Jesus. They bring their students to appreciate the church. They bring their students, even if teaching a secular subject like math or English or something, they bring their students to understand things in a Christian manner. Going back to Brett's point about how math and English and things work with that. They also work with parents. They need to cooperate with parents. Remember, parents are the primary educators, even if the teachers, the teacher that student has for that year is probably the most important educator after the parents in that year. And it's interesting here that the document talks about sex differences, the male and the female. So it's important to note that there is that opportunity for sex-separated classes. Now, it doesn't say those are mandatory, but those can be good. I think for especially sensitive topics like sexual education and things like that, it's important still to do that. It's not necessarily as important to do that, say, for math or English or things, although it can be helpful if a school does that. And it's also important, this points to some modern issues about sexuality and how we deal with LGBTQIA or whatever acronym you're using today for things like that. We're not going to go in depth because that's not the main point, but this idea of understanding the difference between men and women is important for Catholic education. And then we teach students to act right on their own. We teach them the morals, but we don't just say, hey, now on your own, go and do whatever. No, we teach them and then give them, and hopefully they learn. And then it notes that Catholics and parents should, if possible, send their students to Catholic schools and should support Catholic schools. Even after your own students have graduated, a lot of times you might have money when your grandparents are retired or something, more money than you did when you had kids, and now you can give things for scholarships to Catholic schools or pay for your grandkids' Catholic schools or things like that. So it concludes today. Thank you for listening to this episode of Vatican II in a Year. This is a listener-supported podcast. You can donate to help StarQuest produce it and other great podcasts at sqpn.com/give. You can give one-time monthly or join the StarQuest Patreon. Tomorrow we will continue with the next paragraph of Gravissimus Educationis, which is paragraph 9 on the types of Catholic school. Please join us then to learn more about Vatican II, which provide a blueprint for the Catholic Church. If you want more information on the podcast, such as playlists for individual documents and a reading plan, go to sqpn.com/Vatican, frmatthewlc.com/Vatican, or Vatican SQPN on Facebook and X. There's also a Discord server for Vatican II in a Year, and that's located at sqpn.com/Discord. And then there's a channel for Vatican II in a Year, correct? Not a whole Discord server for this podcast alone, but I go to that channel pretty regularly to check on how people are thinking about the podcast.
Amen.